fourth line, which is mostly destroyed, unfortunately, which has the production of the lime mortar to be used on site. From the cooking of the stones to the slating of the mortar and so on and so forth. Very interesting thing. We have also a unique thing in the dome of the caldarium of the hot room, which is this dome painted with a representation of the night sky with constellations and stars, and even with coordinates. I mean, you have the lines and everything. So this is a unique thing. Is the earliest representation of the sky on a non-flat surface. So this is actually an extraordinary piece of astronomical skill. Then we have also other things. We have some grotesque figures that are more in the tradition of Roman paintings, for example. This is a bear that is playing a lute. And we have representations in the tepid room of naked women, but not erotic scenes. These are women that are just having their bath with their children. This woman is holding a small child in her arms. So they are surprising in the sense that are representation of naked women, but at the same time is not they're not erotic scenes. Although some element of eroticism can probably be seen in other paintings, but we are not so sure about that. For example, here it's a very mysterious scene. This is the largest painting in the room, in the building. It's approximately 8 meters or 9 meters wide by more than 6 meters tall. So it's a very impressive painting with, unfortunately, maybe the light is a little bit too strong. But this is actually the way also you see sometimes the painting, I mean, at least in the conditions in which it is today. So you have a representation of a hunting scene here, for example. Yeah, that's probably better, thanks. You have a representation of a hunting scene with dogs and people on horseback chasing wild donkeys, onagers, which are trapped into some kind of a net where they're going to be slaughtered. We have a representation of 6 kings here, which are paying their respect to the prince, to the Umayyad prince. And this is, I'm going to go into this detail because it's absolutely extraordinary, this other scene. We have a topless woman on the edge of a pool here, observed by some people around her. And we have a presentation of people doing some kind of gymnastics on this side. So it's still kind of a complex scene that is not really clearly interpreted. But let's go back to the 6 kings, which have, rivers of inks have been used to describe the scenes or to try to interpret what this means. The 6 kings are probably the kings that have been defeated by the Umayyads during that dynasty. We have the Byzantine emperor, which is the first Qusayr. Then we have King Roderick of Spain, Don Rodrigo, which was defeated by the Umayyads in 711, which of course led to the conquest of most of Spain by the Umayyads. The third king is the Sasanian emperor, Khosrow. And then we have the Negus of Abyssinia, and then we have 2 more kings which are not, unfortunately, we know these names because there are inscriptions on top which tell us who they are. And the last 2, unfortunately, don't have the inscription, and so we cannot know, but some people think one could be the king of Armenia and another one could be a Central Asian king. The condition of the site suffer from some pressure in visitation. You know, I said that in some days you can have up to 500 people coming into the site. Unfortunately, there are a lot of graffiti, and there are, in the outskirts, there are clandestine excavations and bulldozing in other areas. There is also problems of quarrying, illegal quarrying, and problem of erosion, especially at the wall bases, problem of losses of the exterior layers of the mortars, soot and grime from fires that have never been cleaned, water leaks from broken windows. Unfortunately, the Spanish project, I'm talking about 1970s, when the techniques of conservation were not so developed as today, so they applied some materials that are not very beneficial for the site. And one of these in particular is called shellac, which is something that you use on furniture and seals basically the wall, doesn't allow the wall to transpire and to breathe, which has created some problem of detachments of the paint layers from the bottom. So when we started this project, then we proceeded first with a thorough documentation of the site, trying to also achieve a collection, and by contacting all the institutions that we knew were involved in a way or another with documentation of the site. And as you can see, it's a little bit all over the world, from the Library of Congress to the Getty Research Institute, from the University of Michigan to University College London, and so on and so forth. This is all organization that answers to our call for providing documentation in a very enthusiastic way, and almost all of them provided for free their material. And this includes very early photographs, documents, and so on. So here you have just an example of this very early photography. And you can see, for example, in this photo from the 1930s, which you could not see almost anything of the site, because the site was used again as mostly as a shelter by Bedouins. Fires were lit inside and so on. So, for example, here in this detail, you can see what was the condition of the paintings before the Spanish intervention. You could not see almost anything, and this is the after. So this was a little bit of a little witness that the Spanish had left to show the condition of the site before their intervention. We proceeded with some extra documentation. We did some orthophotography. Orthophotography is a technique that basically allows you, it's a photogrammetric technique basically. What you do with it is that you have a model which is geometrically correct, so you can take measurements of it. We proceeded also with other type of photography, written light, which allows us to see all the scratches and the problems of the surface of the painting, ultraviolet, infrared, which have generated these false colors images, which are also useful to understand which materials are applied on the surface. We also did a thermal analysis in order to see whether where the detachments were, or where problems of thermal discrepancies were in the walls of the monument, and also 3D laser scanning, so that we have a virtual model that we can use also for all kind of analysis and measurements. With that, for example, we can cut the monument at any angle, at any surface, so that we can also study the monument itself. Finally, also a topographic survey and definition of the site boundaries, so that the site boundaries can be better defined for the UNESCO, which has requested a better definition of this of the boundaries of the site itself. And also graphic documentation in order to document the condition of the site before the intervention. We also proceeded with a comprehensive archaeological survey and some soundings, because we discovered that, for example, some traces that were very visible on the surface are actually remains of a very large complex of monuments which are buried under about 1 meter of debris, and are very interesting because some of these are probably workshops related to the construction of the site. For example, in one of these rooms we found more than 10,000 fragments of mosaic, which were probably either prepared there or cut there in order to be used in the monument itself. And we also identified where the quarries of the site are. So this is the ruins of the Qusayr that I was mentioning before, and this is a whole system of quarries which were never identified before, and where you can see actually the splitting of the stone, which is exactly described by the artists in the building itself. where you have this guy splitting from the quarry itself and cutting on site the stone in order to be transported to the work site. In coordination with UNESCO, we also, the Department of Antiquities has obtained a grant in order to conserve the mosaics. This project will start in June this year and be completed before the fall. Conservation intervention on the vaults was essential in order to protect the site from water infiltration. So we analyzed the mortars and we reproduced the mortars exactly as the original recipe was. And so we proceeded with the reapplication of the mortars in order to better protect the site. Also, many of these openings were either had the broken glass or were just left open in the past. We proceeded with producing these glass covers, which now are placed on all the walls of the monument. And these were produced, specially produced one by one, because each one has a different dimension, in Murano, in Italy, so that we have now a nice Murano glass which basically fits with the imperial character of this building. I'll show you something. This is just just to show you the before and after the conservation. So all the losses have been filled. The character of the monument, it's much more balanced also in its aspect. Let's talk about the mural conservation, because this is probably where the most extraordinary discoveries have been made. So we proceeded with the selection of one wall for the first experiments. We selected it mostly not because of its of what they represent actually, and that was an extra, but because of the conservation condition of this monument, of this wall. This wall had it all. Had extra layers of shellac applied here. We don't know why. I mean, it was like very, very thick layers of shellac. We had graffiti. We had a lot of water had percolated from these broken windows, so there was a lot of concretion of calcium carbonate on top. We had dejection from birds that were nesting in this area, so everything. I mean, all the possible bad conservation conditions were there. So we selected this wall because it was one of the most difficult in the building, and it was useful to know how long this had to be done. So we proceeded with ultraviolet analysis of this building, and the yellow shows the presence of the shellac, while the bluish material is the organic material, the dejection and of the birds. We proceeded with the analysis of the mortar, and the surprise was to find some interesting components within the lime mortar, because we found that there was trace elements of rabbit skin glue, egg, and casein. Casein, either milk or yogurt, was added in the composition of the mortar in order to make it more plastic and more workable during work. I see that it's not a surprise for you. It's not. I mean, it's not something completely surprising, because it's known from other sources that this type of material could be added to this. But this is the first time that this material clearly recognized. The thin section analysis of the mortar and paint layers show a very complex situation, where you have the base mortar here, and then you have